the reason why this first really originated. What is this persuasive argument, whatever you want to call it, where it first originated? So me and my friends, we had gotten into somewhat of a debate, what's the hardest sport, whether basketball, wrestling, any things of that nature. So that's what it really originated from. Me being a wrestler myself, of course I'm gonna say wrestling, because it's like, that's all I really do. So here's why wrestling is the hardest sport. First point is the conditioning. Everything that you have to do with wrestling, it goes by pace and speed. And if you don't have that conditioning to keep that constant pace and speed throughout the whole match, you're not gonna last. And stuff like other sports such as, basketball, not trying to throw no shade and all like that. It slows down and speeds back up. You get breaks and stuff like that in basketball. Wrestling is 6 minutes of straight action, straight chaos, So, and it just keeps going back and forth, So, and it's constant pressure on your body. The pressure's not gonna stop because this it's very hands-on. Moves like neck snaps and stuff like that, it's gonna happen all the time. So you're gonna get control. You're gonna control is whether you do the controlling or not. Another thing is like the skill gap. There is a huge skill gap in wrestling. The skill gap is so huge. Like there are so many different positions. Like if you don't know how to get out of certain positions and get into certain positions to set yourself up for victory, you're not gonna last at all. So I've talked to multiple people, actually, people who did both wrestling and basketball. People like at least 4 or 5 different people, and they all said wrestling is a much harder sport compared to people who've only played basketball. And then of course they're gonna say basketball is harder sport because they've never experienced wrestling. And it's just straight basketball. But people who did both wrestling and basketball before, has experience with both, they've told me and told everybody else that wrestling is a much harder sport. Things like ESPN might say that wrestling, or they have basketball on a higher scale than wrestling, but ESPN doesn't study wrestling like that. They don't study wrestling as much as they study basketball. And when it comes to stuff from the higher level wrestling, you can argue maybe a little bit more of an argument, but we're keeping it down to high school level, which is what I'm arguing about, and which is why wrestling is harder sport. And the thing is, when it comes to wrestling, or at least Georgia wrestling, Georgia High School State Association wrestling, Georgia isn't even top 10. Georgia isn't top 10, and Georgia is like hard enough as it is. So if you go up to states such as Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California, Florida, things of that nature, it's going to be much more strugglesome for people who don't know you. You feel me? So that is like, basically, I could really talk about this all day. To be honest, I could talk about this all day. A good 30 minutes worth of me explaining why high school wrestling is much harder than any other sport, the most difficult sport of high school, much harder than soccer, all that other stuff. I can go on all day, but down to a time limit. So I got to keep it short, concise, and that is my persuasive speech.